The rain had been falling all morning, turning the streets into rivers of gray water. Inside the small diner on Maple Street, the windows were fogged up from the warmth inside. A young girl sat alone in the corner booth, her wheelchair tucked close to the worn table. Her name was Sophie, and today was her 19th birthday. She looked down at the coins spread out in front of her. 2 quarters, 4 dimes, 6 nickels, and 10 pennies. She had counted them 3 times already, hoping somehow the amount would magically increase. But no matter how many times she counted, it always came to the same total. $2. That was all she had to celebrate another year of life. The waitress, an older woman with kind eyes and tired feet, came over with a gentle smile. She had seen Sophie come in here before, always alone, always counting her money carefully before ordering the cheapest thing on the menu. "What can I get you today, sweetheart?" the waitress asked, her voice soft. Sophie looked up at the menu board, though she had already memorized every price. "Just a cupcake, please. The chocolate one, if you have it, coming right up. And happy birthday, dear." Sophie's eyes widened slightly. "How did you know?" The waitress pointed to a small button on Sophie's jacket that said "Birthday Girl" in faded letters. Sophie had forgotten she was even wearing it. She had pinned it on that morning in her room at the group home, a silly attempt to make the day feel special. Now she felt embarrassed. "Thank you," Sophie whispered, pushing her $2 across the table. As the waitress walked away, Sophie let her mind drift back 2 years. 2 years ago, her life had been completely different. She had been a regular 17-year-old girl with big dreams and a loving family. Her parents had been taking her to visit colleges, talking excitedly about her future. She wanted to be a teacher, maybe work with young children. She loved reading to kids and watching their faces light up when a story got exciting. Then came that rainy night, so much like this morning. Her father had been driving them home from dinner. They were laughing about something, she couldn't even remember what anymore. Then there were headlights so bright they hurt her eyes, the sound of her mother screaming, the terrible crash of metal on metal, and then nothing but darkness and pain. When she woke up in the hospital 3 weeks later, the doctors told her everything at once. Her parents were gone. Her spine was damaged. She would never walk again. At 17, her entire world had ended and begun again in the worst possible way. The distant relatives came to the hospital, faces she barely recognized from old family photos. They stood around her bed talking about her as if she wasn't there. Who would take her? Who could afford it? Who had the space? One by one, they all found reasons why they couldn't. Too small of a house. Too many of their own children. Not enough money. Too far away. The excuses piled up like the medical bills no one wanted to pay. Eventually, the social worker stepped in. Sophie became a ward of the state. They placed her in a group home for young adults with disabilities. It wasn't a terrible place, but it wasn't home either. The staff were overworked and underpaid. They made sure everyone was fed and safe, but there wasn't much room for things like celebrating birthdays or remembering what each person loved. This morning, Sophie had woken up hoping that anyone would remember. But breakfast had come and gone with no mention of the date. The other residents were dealing with their own struggles, lost in their own worlds. The staff rushed through their morning routines, checking medications and helping with daily tasks. No one looked at the calendar. No one looked at her, so Sophie had decided to celebrate on her own. She had been saving coins for weeks, finding them dropped in hallways given as change from her small disability check. $2 had felt like a fortune when she started saving. Now sitting in the diner, it felt like very little to show for 19 years of life. The waitress returned with a chocolate cupcake on a small plate. It was simple, with chocolate frosting swirled on top. She had also brought a single pink candle and a book of matches. "On the house," the waitress said, pointing to the candle. "Everyone deserves a wish on their birthday." Sophie's throat tightened with emotion. This stranger had shown her more kindness in 2 minutes than she had received all day. "Thank you so much." The waitress lit the candle and stepped back. Around the diner, a few people glanced over, then quickly looked away. Sophie was used to that. People didn't know how to react to her wheelchair, to her youth, to the sadness that seemed to hang around her like a cloud. It made them uncomfortable, so they pretended not to see. The small flame flickered in front of Sophie's face. She closed her eyes, trying to think of what to wish for. World peace? That seemed too big. A cure? The doctors had been clear that her injury was permanent. Money? It wouldn't bring her parents back or give her back her old life. In the end, she wished for something simple. She wished not to be alone. Not just today, but in life. She wished for someone, anyone, to care that she existed, to remember her birthday next year, to ask how her day was and actually want to hear the answer. When she opened her eyes, the tears came before she could stop them. They rolled down her cheeks, dropping onto the table. She quickly wiped them away, embarrassed, but more kept coming. Here she was, 19 years old, crying over a cupcake in a diner while rain poured down outside. This wasn't how she had imagined her life would be. Other customers definitely noticed now, but they looked away even faster. Crying made people even more uncomfortable than wheelchairs. One couple quickly paid their bill and left. An older man behind his newspaper shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Sophie took a shaky breath and blew out the candle. The smoke curled up toward the ceiling, carrying her wish with it. She pulled the candle from the cupcake and set it aside. The frosting had melted slightly where the candle had been, creating a small crater in the chocolate. She picked up a plastic fork and cut off a small piece. The cupcake was good, probably the best thing she had tasted in months. The group home food was bland and repetitive. This simple chocolate cupcake felt like luxury. As she ate slowly, trying to make it last, Sophie watched the rain continue to fall outside. People rushed by with umbrellas, hurrying to get wherever they needed to go. Everyone had somewhere to be, someone waiting for them. Everyone except her. She had almost finished the cupcake when the bell above the diner door chimed. Sophie didn't look up. She had learned not to stare at people when they came in. But she heard a small voice, young and excited, cutting through the quiet murmur of the diner. "Dad, look. That girl has a birthday cupcake." Sophie glanced up despite herself. A little boy, maybe 7 or 8 years old, stood near the entrance holding his father's hand. He was pointing directly at her, his eyes wide with excitement. His father tried to shush him, clearly embarrassed, but the boy wouldn't be quiet. "Dad, we have to sing to her." "It's her birthday." Sophie's heart began to pound. She didn't know whether to feel mortified or hopeful. The last thing she wanted was more attention. But something in the boy's voice, so pure and genuine, made her pause. The father looked tired, his clothes rumpled from a long day. But when he looked down at his son, his expression softened. He seemed to be having an internal debate, weighing something in his mind. Then, to Sophie's complete shock, the father nodded. He took a step toward her table, his son bouncing excitedly beside him. Sophie's hands gripped the edge of the table. She had no idea what was about to happen. But for the first time all day, she felt something other than sadness. She felt a tiny spark of hope. The father and son walked slowly toward Sophie's table, and she felt her heart racing. Part of her wanted to tell them not to bother, that she was fine, that they didn't need to feel sorry for her. But another part of her, the part that had been so desperately lonely all day, wanted them to come closer. The little boy reached her table first, his smile so bright it seemed to light up the whole corner of the diner. He couldn't have been more than 7 years old, with messy dark hair and eyes full of excitement. "Hi, is it really your birthday?" he asked, bouncing on his toes. Sophie nodded, not trusting her voice yet. She was still trying not to cry. "I'm Tyler," the boy announced proudly. "And this is my dad, Michael. We're going to sing happy birthday to you, okay?" Michael stood behind his son, looking slightly uncomfortable but determined. He was younger than Sophie had first thought, maybe in his early 30s. His clothes were clean but worn, the kind of tired that comes from working long hours. But his eyes were kind, and when he smiled at Sophie, it reached all the way to those eyes. "If that's all right with you," Michael added quickly. "Tyler here has a hard time seeing anyone celebrate alone." Sophie wanted to say no. She wanted to save them the awkwardness, save herself the embarrassment. But when she looked at Tyler's eager face, she couldn't bring herself to disappoint him. "Okay," she whispered. Tyler didn't need any more encouragement. He took a deep breath, and in a voice that was much louder than such a small boy should be able to produce, he started singing. "Happy birthday to you," Michael joined in, his deeper voice mixing with his son's high, slightly off-key one. Around the diner, a few other customers looked over. The waitress stopped what she was doing and started singing too. Then the old man with the newspaper joined in. Then a young couple in the next booth. Within seconds, the entire diner was singing to Sophie. "Happy birthday to you." "Happy birthday, dear." Tyler paused, realizing he didn't know her name. Sophie. she managed to say through her tears. "Happy birthday, dear Sophie. Happy birthday to you." The song ended and a few people even clapped. Sophie covered her face with her hands, overwhelmed. She was crying again, but this time they weren't tears of sadness. For the first time in 2 years, she felt seen. Not pitied, but truly seen. "Can we sit with you?" Tyler asked, already sliding into the booth across from her before his father could stop him. "Tyler, maybe Sophie wants to be alone," Michael said gently, though he didn't make his son move. Sophie shook her head quickly. "No, please, I'd like the company." Michael looked relieved. He sat down next to Tyler, and the waitress came over to take their order. Michael studied the menu carefully, and Sophie noticed him checking the prices. When he ordered, he asked for 1 burger and fries to share with Tyler and 2 glasses of water. Sophie recognized that kind of careful ordering. It was the same way she always ordered, counting every penny, making sure not to spend more than absolutely necessary. Tyler didn't seem to notice. He was already pulling things out of his backpack, excited to show Sophie. First came a drawing of what looked like a dinosaur, or maybe a dragon. It was hard to tell. "I drew this in school today," Tyler said proudly. "Do you like dinosaurs?" "I love them," Sophie said, and she meant it. There was something wonderful about Tyler's enthusiasm, the way he treated her like any other person, not someone to be pitied or avoided. "Tyler's obsessed with anything prehistoric," Michael explained with a tired but fond smile. "We've read every dinosaur book in the library twice. 3 times for some of them," Tyler corrected seriously. He pulled out more drawings, each one carefully explained. This one was a T-Rex. This one was a Triceratops. This one was a pterodactyl, even though Tyler informed her very seriously that technically pterodactyls weren't dinosaurs. They were flying reptiles. Sophie found herself laughing, really laughing, for the first time in months. Tyler's joy was infectious. He didn't ask about her wheelchair. He didn't give her sad looks or speak to her in that slow, loud voice some people used, as if being in a wheelchair meant she couldn't hear or understand. Their food arrived and Michael carefully cut the burger in half, giving the bigger piece to Tyler. Sophie noticed, but didn't say anything. She had finished her cupcake, but she wasn't hungry anyway. Watching them together filled something in her that food couldn't touch. "So, Sophie," Michael said between bites, "do you live around here?" "A few blocks away," Sophie said. "At the group home on Chester Street." Michael nodded, his expression thoughtful. He didn't ask why she was in a group home or what had happened to her. She appreciated that more than he could know. "I work at St. Mary's Rehabilitation Center," Michael said. "I'm a nurse there. We help people with all kinds of injuries and conditions." Sophie's eyes widened. "Really? I was supposed to go to physical therapy after my accident, but the group home said there wasn't money for it." Michael's jaw tightened slightly, but his voice stayed calm. "How long has it been since your accident?" 2 years last month. "And no physical therapy at all?" Sophie shook her head. "They gave me this wheelchair and said I should be grateful. They said therapy wouldn't help anyway since the damage was permanent." Michael looked like he wanted to say something strong, but he glanced at Tyler and seemed to think better of it. "That's not necessarily true. Even with permanent injuries, therapy can make a huge difference in strength, independence, and preventing complications." The way he talked, so matter-of-fact and professional, made Sophie feel less broken somehow. He wasn't treating her injury like a tragedy. He was treating it like a medical condition that could be managed. Tyler, having finished his half of the burger, was drawing again. This time he was drawing Sophie. She watched as he carefully added her wheelchair, making it look almost like a throne. In his drawing, she wore a crown. "You're a birthday princess," Tyler announced, showing her the picture. "Dad says everyone's special on their birthday." "Your dad is very smart," Sophie said softly. "I know," Tyler said with complete seriousness. "He knows everything about helping people. He helps people walk again. Well, some people. He says some people use wheelchairs, and that's okay too. He says wheelchairs are just different ways of moving around, like some people ride bikes and some people walk." Sophie looked at Michael, who had gone slightly red. "I try to teach him that everyone has value, regardless of ability," Michael explained. "My younger brother has cerebral palsy. I grew up understanding that different doesn't mean less than." They talked for over an hour. Michael told her about his work, carefully avoiding any graphic details but sharing stories of patients who had overcome incredible odds. Tyler told her about school, about his favorite teacher, about the bully who had been mean to him until Tyler's friend stood up for him. Sophie found herself opening up in ways she hadn't in years. She told them about her parents, about the accident, about her dreams of becoming a teacher. She told them how much she missed reading stories to children, how she used to volunteer at the library before everything changed. "Why can't you still do that?" Tyler asked simply. "You can still read, right?" The question was so innocent, so logical that Sophie didn't have an answer. She had just assumed that part of her life was over. But Tyler was right. She could still read. She could still love stories. The wheelchair didn't change that. "You know what?" Michael said thoughtfully. "The children's ward at the hospital is always looking for volunteers to read to the kids. Many of them are there for weeks or months. They get bored and scared. Someone coming to read stories would mean the world to them." Sophie's heart jumped. "Really? Do you think they would let me?" "Let you? They'd be thrilled. I can give you the volunteer coordinator's number if you want." For the first time in 2 years, Sophie felt a spark of purpose. Maybe her life wasn't over. Maybe it was just different now. The waitress came by to refill their water glasses. "You folks want anything else?" Michael checked his watch and sighed. "We should probably get going. I have work in the morning, early shift." Tyler's face fell. "But Dad, we just got here." "We've been here for an hour, buddy." Sophie felt disappointed too, but she tried to hide it. This hour had been the best birthday present she could have imagined. These two strangers had given her something she thought she'd lost forever: hope. As they stood to leave, Tyler ran around the table and hugged Sophie tightly. She was so surprised she almost didn't hug him back. But then she wrapped her arms around the little boy and held on. "Happy birthday, Sophie," Tyler whispered. "I hope all your wishes come true." Michael paid their bill, leaving a generous tip for the waitress despite clearly not having much money. Then he pulled out a small piece of paper and wrote something on it. "Here's my number," he said, handing it to Sophie. "And the hospital volunteer coordinator's name. Call her. Tell her I sent you. And if you ever need anything or just want to talk, you can call me too. Okay?" Sophie took the paper with shaking hands. "Thank you for everything. This was the best birthday I've had in a long time." Michael smiled, a sad but warm smile. "Everyone deserves to be celebrated, Sophie. Don't forget that." As they walked toward the door, Tyler turned back and waved enthusiastically. Sophie waved back, clutching the paper with Michael's number like it was made of gold. She sat there for a long time after they left, watching the rain finally stop and the sun break through the clouds. The paper sat on the table in front of her, a promise of possibility. For the first time since the accident, Sophie allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, her life could still have meaning. That maybe she could still matter to someone. She carefully folded the paper and tucked it into her pocket, right next to her heart. Sophie stared at the phone number for 3 days before she finally got the courage to call. Every time she picked up the phone at the group home, her hands would shake and she'd put it back down. What if Michael had only given her his number, out of pity? What if he didn't really mean it? What if she was bothering him? But on the 4th day, when the loneliness felt too heavy to carry alone, she dialed the number. Michael answered on the second ring. "Hello? Hi, this is Sophie. From the diner? I don't know if you remember." "Of course I remember," Michael said warmly. "I was hoping you'd call. Did you reach out to the volunteer coordinator?" Sophie felt relief wash over her. He sounded genuinely happy to hear from her. "Not yet. I was scared they'd say no. Tell you what, I'm working tomorrow afternoon. Why don't you come by the hospital around 2? I'll introduce you myself. It's harder to say no to someone in person." That's how Sophie found herself wheeling through the halls of St. Mary's Hospital the next day, her heart pounding. The building was huge and intimidating, with its white walls and smell of antiseptic. But when she found Michael's floor, she saw him talking to an elderly patient, his face kind and patient as he explained something about medication. When he saw Sophie, his whole face lit up. "You made it. Give me just 2 minutes to finish up here." True to his word, 2 minutes later he was guiding her through the hallways, pointing out different departments. He introduced her to nurses, doctors, and other staff members, treating her like she belonged there. No one stared at her wheelchair. In a hospital, wheelchairs were just part of the landscape. The volunteer coordinator, a cheerful woman named Patricia, welcomed Sophie with open arms. "Michael told me all about you. When can you start?" Sophie was stunned. "You mean I can volunteer? Just like that?" "We do need to run a background check, but that's just standard procedure. Based on what Michael tells me about your love of reading and working with children, you'd be perfect for our pediatric floor. Those kids need someone with patience and heart." Within 2 weeks, Sophie had her volunteer badge. She started coming to the hospital 3 times a week, wheeling her chair from room to room, reading stories to children who were scared, lonely, or bored. Some kids were there for a few days. Others had been there for months. But they all lit up when Sophie came in with her bag of books. One little girl, Amy, had been in the hospital for 6 weeks recovering from a serious surgery. She was only 5 years old and she cried every night for her mother, who could only visit on weekends because she had to work. Sophie started spending extra time with Amy, reading her favorite stories over and over, doing puzzles together, and just sitting with her when the pain was too much for playing. Michael would often stop by during Sophie's volunteer hours, checking on the children but also checking on her. He'd bring her coffee, ask how her day was going, and listen when she talked about the kids. Sometimes Tyler would come with him after school, and he'd sit with Sophie and the children, drawing pictures or telling elaborate dinosaur stories that made everyone laugh. The weeks turned into months, and something shifted in Sophie's life. She wasn't just existing anymore. She was living. She had purpose. She had people who expected her, who looked forward to seeing her. The children would ask the nurses, "Is Sophie coming today?" And when she'd wheel onto the floor, she'd hear little voices calling her name. But the group home was becoming a bigger problem. Her wheelchair was getting worse, the wheels sticking and making it harder to move around. She had asked the director, Mr. Peterson, for repairs multiple times, but he kept saying there was no money in the budget. One afternoon, after her volunteer shift, Sophie was struggling to wheel herself down the hospital hallway. Her chair kept pulling to one side and her arms were exhausted from fighting with it. Michael saw her and immediately came over. "Sophie, what's wrong with your chair? It's been acting up for weeks. I've asked for it to be fixed, but..." She trailed off, not wanting to complain. Michael knelt down and examined the wheelchair. His face grew serious. "Sophie, this isn't safe. The frame is cracked here, and the wheels are completely worn down. You could get hurt using this." "I know, but it's all I have." Michael stood up and Sophie could see anger in his eyes, though she knew it wasn't directed at her. "Wait here." He disappeared for a few minutes and came back with Dr. Reynolds, the head of the rehabilitation department. Dr. Reynolds looked at the wheelchair and shook his head. "This should have been replaced months ago," he said firmly. "Who's responsible for your medical equipment?" "The group home, I guess. But they say there's no money." Dr. Reynolds and Michael exchanged a look that Sophie couldn't quite read. "We'll see about that," Dr. Reynolds said. That evening, Michael asked if he could visit Sophie at the group home. She was embarrassed for him to see where she lived, but she agreed. When he arrived with Tyler, Sophie saw him taking in everything: the peeling paint, the overcrowded rooms, the staff who barely looked up from their phones. Mr. Peterson, the director, came out to meet them, his fake smile plastered on his face. "Can I help you?" "I'm Michael Chen. I'm a nurse at St. Mary's, and I've gotten to know Sophie through her volunteer work. I'm concerned about her medical equipment. Her wheelchair is dangerous." Mr. Peterson's smile tightened. "We provide adequate care within our budget constraints. Sophie receives her disability benefits, which cover her needs." "Her disability benefits?" Michael's voice was carefully controlled. "Those benefits are meant specifically for her medical needs and quality of life." "Where's that money going if not to essential equipment like a safe wheelchair?" "I don't appreciate your tone," Mr. Peterson said coldly. We operate within all legal requirements. Sophie wanted to disappear. She hated confrontation, hated being the center of attention like this. But Tyler reached over and held her hand, giving her courage. Legal requirements are minimum standards, Michael said. Sophie deserves better than minimum. She's a wonderful person doing amazing work with sick children. The least she deserves is equipment that won't break down and hurt her. After Michael left that night, Mr. Peterson pulled Sophie aside. I don't appreciate you bringing outsiders in to complain about our facility. If you're not happy here, there are other places you could go. Sophie felt sick. She hadn't meant to cause trouble. But where else could she go? She had nowhere else. She called Michael that night crying. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to make things worse. Mr. Peterson is angry with me now. Sophie, listen to me, Michael said firmly. You did nothing wrong. Something isn't right there, and I'm going to find out what. Can you get copies of your financial statements? Your disability benefit statements? I can try. Over the next week, Michael helped Sophie request her financial records. When they arrived, Michael sat down with her and went through every page. His face grew darker with each document. Sophie, according to these statements, you should be receiving $800 a month in disability benefits. That money is supposed to go toward your care, your equipment, your therapy. But look at this. He pointed to the group home's accounting. They're only spending about $200 a month on you. The rest is listed as administrative fees and facility costs. Is that normal? Some administrative costs are normal, but not like this. They're basically pocketing most of your money while giving you the bare minimum. That's why your wheelchair hasn't been fixed. That's why you never got physical therapy. They're profiting off your suffering. Sophie felt dizzy. What can I do? I have nowhere else to go. Michael was quiet for a long moment. Let me talk to some people. There has to be something we can do. But before Michael could do anything, everything fell apart. Sophie woke up one morning with severe pain in her lower back. By afternoon, she had a fever. By evening, she was in the emergency room. The diagnosis was a pressure sore that had become badly infected. The doctor told her that pressure sores were common in wheelchair users, but they were preventable with proper care, good equipment, and regular position changes. This should never have gotten this bad, the doctor said seriously. This is the result of extended neglect. Sophie spent 3 days in the hospital. Michael came to see her every day, even on his days off. Tyler made her cards covered in drawings of dinosaurs and flowers. Amy, the little girl Sophie had been reading to, even came down from the children's floor with a nurse to give Sophie a picture she'd colored. But lying in that hospital bed, Sophie realized how serious her situation was. The group home wasn't just neglectful. It was dangerous. She could have died from this infection. And even if she survived this time, what about next time? On the third day, Michael came in looking determined. He pulled a chair up to her bed and took her hand. Sophie, I've been doing a lot of thinking. Actually, Tyler and I both have. And we want to ask you something important. Sophie's heart started racing. Okay. How would you feel about coming to live with us? Officially, I mean. I'd apply to be your foster guardian. It would take time and paperwork and inspections. But Tyler and I, we've talked about it a lot. We want you to be part of our family. Sophie couldn't breathe. She stared at Michael, sure she had heard him wrong. You want me to live with you? But why? You barely know me. You're not just anything. Michael interrupted gently. You're kind, brave, and you've brought so much joy into our lives. Tyler talks about you constantly. And honestly, Sophie, you've become like family to us already. We want to make it official. If you want that too. Tears streamed down Sophie's face. I want that more than anything. But are you sure? Taking care of me, it's a lot of work, and Sophie, Michael said with a smile. I'm a rehabilitation nurse. Taking care of people is literally what I do. But this isn't about me taking care of you. This is about us being a family. Taking care of each other. Sophie nodded, unable to speak through her tears. For the first time since her parents died, she felt like she might have a home again. The next few months felt like living in a dream that Sophie was afraid to wake up from. Michael had filed the paperwork to become her guardian, but the process was slow and complicated. There were background checks, home inspections, interviews with social workers, and mountains of forms to fill out. Meanwhile, Sophie had to return to the group home after her hospital stay. Mr. Peterson was colder than ever, barely speaking to her except to remind her of the rules. The other staff members seemed uncomfortable around her now, as if they knew something was coming but didn't want to get involved. Michael visited her almost every day after work, often bringing Tyler along. They'd sit in the common room doing puzzles or watching movies on Tyler's tablet. The other residents started to notice, and some of them looked at Sophie with envy. Others seemed happy for her, especially the older residents who understood how rare it was to find people who truly cared. One evening, Michael came alone. He looked tired, the kind of exhaustion that goes deeper than just physical weariness. He sat down heavily in the chair across from Sophie. "Long day?" she asked softly. Michael nodded. "Yeah, but that's not why I look like this." He paused, seeming to gather his thoughts. "Sophie, there's something I need to tell you. Something I should have told you before I asked you to come live with us." Sophie's stomach dropped. Here it was. He had changed his mind. He realized taking her in was too much work, too much responsibility. She had been stupid to hope. "Okay," she whispered, bracing herself. "Tyler's mother left us 3 years ago," Michael began, his voice quiet. "Her name was Jennifer. We had been married for 5 years when Tyler was diagnosed with autism. It's mild high functioning. Most people don't even notice. But Jennifer, she couldn't handle it. She had this perfect image in her mind of what our family was supposed to be, and when Tyler didn't fit that image, she just gave up." Sophie stayed quiet, letting him talk. "She left on a Tuesday morning. I came home from work and found a note on the kitchen table. She said she never wanted to be a mother to a special needs child, that she deserved better. She signed away her parental rights and moved to another state. Tyler was 4 years old." Michael's voice cracked slightly. Tyler asked about her every day for months. He couldn't understand why his mom didn't love him anymore. I tried to explain that it wasn't his fault, that his mom had her own problems, but how do you make a 4-year-old understand that? "Michael, I'm so sorry," Sophie said, reaching out to take his hand. "The reason I'm telling you this," Michael continued, "is because the social worker brought it up during my interview. She asked if I was trying to replace Jennifer by bringing you into our home. She suggested that maybe I was looking for someone to be Tyler's mother figure, and that my judgment might be clouded by my own needs, rather than what's best for you." Sophie felt her heart sink further. "And what did you say?" I told her the truth. That yes, Tyler misses having a mother figure. That yes, our family feels incomplete. But that's not why I want you to live with us. Michael looked directly into Sophie's eyes. "The social worker asked me what would happen if you and Tyler didn't get along. What would happen if having you in the house was too stressful? What would happen if Tyler's needs and your needs conflicted?" "Those are fair questions," Sophie said quietly. "They are, and I've thought about all of them. But Sophie, the truth is families are messy. Biological families deal with all those same issues. Brothers and sisters don't always get along. Parents and children have conflicts. People's needs clash all the time. But you work through it because you care about each other." He squeezed her hand. "I'm not asking you to be Tyler's mother. I'm not asking you to be anything except yourself. But I am telling you that if you come live with us, it won't always be easy. I work long hours. Money is tight. Our apartment is small. Tyler has meltdowns sometimes when things change his routine. And I know you'll have hard days too, days when your body hurts or you feel frustrated or sad." "Why are you telling me all this?" Sophie asked. "Are you trying to talk me out of it?" "No," Michael said firmly. "I'm trying to be honest with you. I don't want you to come into this thinking everything will be perfect. I want you to know the reality. We're not a perfect family. We're just people trying our best. And if that's enough for you, if you still want to be part of this messy, imperfect life with us, then I promise I'll do everything I can to make it work." Sophie felt tears rolling down her cheeks, but she was smiling. "Michael, I don't need perfect. I just need real. And you and Tyler are the most real thing that's happened to me in 2 years." Michael smiled back, relief washing over his face. "Okay then. Just wanted to make sure we're on the same page." But the road ahead wasn't smooth. The social worker assigned to Sophie's case, Mrs. Harrison, was thorough to the point of being intimidating. She showed up at Michael's apartment unannounced, inspecting every room, asking detailed questions about his finances, his work schedule, his support system. "You're a single father working full-time," Mrs. Harrison said during one visit, her clipboard balanced on her knee. "Sophie will need transportation to medical appointments, therapy sessions, and her volunteer work. How will you manage that with your schedule?" "I've already talked to my supervisor," Michael explained patiently. I can adjust my hours to start earlier so I'm home by 3 most days. On days when I can't make it, my neighbor, Mrs. Chen, she's retired and has already offered to help. She's known Tyler since he was born. And financially, Sophie's disability benefits will help, but there are still significant costs associated with her care. Michael's jaw tightened, but he kept his voice calm. I've been supporting Tyler on my own for 3 years. We live within our means. Yes, money is tight, but we make it work. Sophie won't lack for anything she needs. Mrs. Harrison made notes on her clipboard. I see you work at St. Mary's Rehabilitation Center. Have your colleagues expressed any concerns about potential conflicts of interest, given that Sophie volunteers there? No, because there is no conflict. Sophie volunteers on the pediatric floor. I work in adult rehabilitation. Our paths cross, yes, but that's actually a positive thing. I can ensure she has proper support during her shifts. The questions went on for over an hour. By the end, Michael looked exhausted, and Sophie felt guilty for putting him through all of this. After Mrs. Harrison left, Sophie turned to Michael. Maybe this is too much trouble. Maybe it would be easier if— Don't, Michael interrupted. Don't finish that sentence. Nothing worth doing is easy, Sophie. You're worth the trouble. You're worth every single question, every inspection, every hoop they make us jump through. Tyler, who had been quietly playing with his dinosaurs in the corner, came over and climbed into Sophie's lap. He did this sometimes now, comfortable with her in a way he wasn't with most people. Are you going to live with us soon? Tyler asked, his small hands holding one of his plastic dinosaurs. I hope so, buddy, Sophie said, hugging him close. Good. Because I already told my teacher you're my sister. She said she wants to meet you. Sophie's throat tightened with emotion. Tyler had been calling her his sister for weeks now, so naturally as if it had always been true. 2 weeks later, Mrs. Harrison called with news. We need to do one more inspection, she said. I'll be bringing my supervisor. It's standard procedure for cases like this. Michael took the day off work. He and Sophie cleaned the apartment from top to bottom, though it was already spotless. Tyler practiced showing his room, excited to demonstrate how he'd cleared space in his closet for Sophie's things. When Mrs. Harrison arrived with her supervisor, Mr. Patel, Sophie felt her heart pounding. This was it. The decision that would determine her entire future. Mr. Patel was an older man with kind eyes and a gentle manner. He asked fewer questions than Mrs. Harrison, instead spending time observing how Michael, Tyler, and Sophie interacted. He watched Tyler show Sophie his newest drawing. He noticed how Michael automatically positioned Sophie's wheelchair at the table so she could reach everything comfortably. He saw the way they laughed together over Tyler's joke about a dinosaur. After an hour, Mr. Patel stood up. I've seen enough, he said. Sophie's heart stopped. That could mean anything. Mrs. Harrison, you've done thorough work on this case. I reviewed all your reports, done my own assessment today, and I'm prepared to make a recommendation. He turned to Michael. Mr. Chen, pending the final background checks and paperwork, I'm recommending approval of your guardianship petition. The room went silent for a moment. Then Tyler let out a whoop of joy, jumping up and down. Michael's eyes filled with tears. Sophie couldn't speak at all. There will still be follow-up visits, Mr. Patel continued. We'll check in regularly for the first year. But I believe this placement is in Sophie's best interest. You've demonstrated commitment, capability, and genuine care. That's what matters. After the social workers left, the three of them sat together on the couch processing what had just happened. It wasn't final yet, but it was close. So close Sophie could almost touch it. We're going to be a real family, Tyler said wonderingly. Michael pulled both of them close. We already are, buddy. We already are. But Sophie knew one more challenge lay ahead. They still had to officially remove her from the group home. And Mr. Peterson wasn't going to let go of her disability benefits without a fight. The confrontation came 2 days later. Michael accompanied Sophie to the group home to discuss the transition. Mr. Peterson sat behind his desk, his face hard. You're making a mistake, he told Sophie. You don't know these people. They'll get tired of dealing with you eventually. Everyone does. Sophie lifted her chin. They're more family to me than this place ever was. Fine, Mr. Peterson said coldly. But don't come crawling back here when it doesn't work out. Your bed will be filled within a week. As they left the group home for what Sophie hoped would be the last time, she didn't look back. Her future was ahead of her now, not behind, and for the first time in 2 years that future looked bright. Moving day arrived on a sunny Saturday morning in late spring. Sophie had very few belongings to pack from the group home. 2 boxes of clothes, a few books, some photographs of her parents, and the birthday button she had worn that day in the diner. She had kept it all this time, a reminder of the day her life began to change. Michael and Tyler showed up early with Michael's old truck. Tyler bounced around excitedly, talking nonstop about all the things they were going to do now that Sophie was finally coming home. He had made a Welcome Home Sophie banner that was currently rolled up in the back of the truck, waiting to be hung. The staff at the group home barely acknowledged Sophie's departure. A few residents came to say goodbye, wishing her luck, telling her they were happy for her. One older woman named Dorothy hugged her tightly and whispered, "You deserve this, sweetie. Don't ever forget that." As they drove away from the group home, Sophie watched it disappear in the side mirror. She felt no sadness, only relief. That chapter of her life was over. Michael's apartment was small but cozy. It was on the first floor, which meant no stairs to worry about. Michael had spent weeks making modifications to make it wheelchair accessible. He had widened doorways, installed grab bars in the bathroom, and rearranged furniture to create clear pathways. Tyler's room was decorated with dinosaur posters and drawings covering every inch of wall space. Sophie's new room had been Michael's home office. It was small, but had a large window that let in beautiful morning light. Michael had painted it a soft blue color, and there was a new bed with a comfortable mattress, a small desk, and a bookshelf waiting to be filled. "It's perfect," Sophie said, tears in her eyes as she looked around the space that was now hers. "We can decorate it however you want," Michael said. "This is your home now, Sophie. Your space." That first week was an adjustment for everyone. They had to figure out new routines, new schedules, new ways of sharing space. Tyler sometimes forgot to keep his toys out of the pathways, and Sophie's wheelchair would get stuck. Michael's alarm went off at 5 in the morning, which woke everyone up at first until they got used to it. But there were beautiful moments too. Tyler insisted that Sophie tuck him in every night, wanting her to read him bedtime stories just like she read to the children at the hospital. Michael would make breakfast on his days off, and they'd all eat together, talking and laughing. Sophie helped Tyler with his homework, and he'd show her every drawing he made at school. One evening, about 2 weeks after Sophie moved in, Michael came home from work looking thoughtful. He sat down with Sophie while Tyler was in his room playing. "I've been thinking," Michael said. "Your physical therapy. We need to get you started on that. I know some good therapists at the hospital, and with your disability benefits coming directly to us now, we can afford it." Sophie felt a flutter of hope and fear mixed together. "Do you really think it could help?" The doctors at the group home said. "The doctors at the group home were wrong," Michael said firmly. "Or they just didn't care enough to help you. Physical therapy won't reverse your spinal injury, but it can strengthen your upper body, improve your circulation, help prevent pressure sores, and increase your overall independence. You deserve that chance." They started therapy sessions twice a week. It was hard, painful work. There were days when Sophie wanted to quit, when the exercises made her muscles scream and her body ache. But Michael was always there, encouraging her, reminding her how strong she was, celebrating every small victory. After 6 weeks of therapy, Sophie could transfer herself from her wheelchair to a regular chair without help. After 3 months, her upper body strength had improved so much that wheeling herself around didn't leave her exhausted anymore. After 6 months, she could do things she hadn't been able to do since the accident. Her volunteer work at the hospital continued to flourish. The children adored her, and the staff recognized her dedication. Dr. Reynolds, the head of rehabilitation, approached her one day with an interesting proposal. "Sophie, I've been watching your work with the pediatric patients. You have a real gift for connecting with children, especially those dealing with trauma and long-term illness. Have you ever considered going back to school?" Sophie's heart jumped. "I'd love to, but I don't know if I can afford it. There are programs, scholarships specifically for people with disabilities. And if you're interested in special education or child life services, there are even more opportunities. I'd be happy to write you a recommendation letter." That night at dinner, Sophie shared the news with Michael and Tyler. Tyler cheered, saying he knew Sophie would be a great teacher. Michael's eyes shone with pride. "You should do it," Michael said. We'll figure out the logistics. You've already proven you can balance volunteering with everything else. Adding classes, especially online ones, you can handle that. But what about money? Even with scholarships, Sophie, Michael interrupted gently. You're family now. We support each other. When I went to nursing school, my parents helped me. When times were tough after Jennifer left, my neighbors helped me. Now it's our turn to invest in your future. We'll make it work. Sophie enrolled in online classes that fall, starting with just 2 courses. It was challenging, balancing schoolwork with volunteering and family life. But she had never felt more alive. She was working toward something again, building a future. The holidays came. Their first major holidays as a family. Thanksgiving was small but perfect. Just the 3 of them around their little table. Tyler insisted on going around and saying what they were thankful for. When it was Sophie's turn, she couldn't speak through her tears. She just looked at Michael and Tyler and hoped they could see in her eyes everything she felt. Christmas was magical. Michael didn't have much money for presents, but Tyler had made ornaments in school, and they decorated a small tree together. Sophie had used some of her disability money to buy Tyler dinosaur books he'd been wanting, and got Michael a new stethoscope, since his old one was falling apart. On Christmas morning, Tyler gave Sophie a drawing. It was of the 3 of them holding hands with the word family written across the top in his careful handwriting. Sophie hung it on her wall, where she could see it every morning when she woke up. But the best gift came a few weeks later. Michael had been secretive about something, making mysterious phone calls and going out on errands without explaining where he was going. Sophie and Tyler were both curious but didn't push. Then, on a cold January afternoon, Michael asked Sophie to come with him to the hospital. He said there was something he wanted to show her. When they got to the rehabilitation center, he led her to the equipment room. There, brand new and shining, was a state-of-the-art wheelchair. It was lightweight, with smooth rolling wheels, comfortable cushioning, and even some customizable features. Michael, I can't accept this, Sophie said, overwhelmed. This must have cost thousands of dollars. It did, Michael admitted. But I didn't pay for it alone. Dr. Reynolds helped me organize a fundraiser at the hospital. When staff heard your story, how you volunteer every week despite your old wheelchair falling apart, they wanted to help. Some donated money, some donated time. The medical supply company even gave us a discount when they heard what it was for. Sophie couldn't stop crying. I don't know what to say. Say you'll accept it. Say you'll keep being the amazing person you are. That's all the thanks anyone needs. The new wheelchair changed everything. Sophie could move more easily, go more places, do more things. Her independence grew, and with it, her confidence. As winter turned to spring, Sophie realized her 20th birthday was approaching. She mentioned it casually one evening, not wanting to make a big deal out of it. But Tyler overheard and immediately started planning. On the morning of her birthday, Sophie woke up to the smell of pancakes and the sound of Tyler singing off-key in the kitchen. When she wheeled out to the living room, she found it decorated with streamers and balloons. Tyler's Happy Birthday Sophie banner hung proudly across the wall. Michael had made chocolate chip pancakes in the shape of hearts. Tyler had made her cards, at least a dozen of them, each one decorated with drawings and messages. There were presents wrapped in newspaper because they'd run out of wrapping paper, which made Sophie laugh. But the best part was simply being together. They ate breakfast as a family, laughing and talking. Tyler told jokes he'd learned at school. Michael shared a funny story about a patient. Sophie felt so full of joy she thought she might burst. Later that afternoon, Michael told her they were going out. He drove them back to the diner where they'd first met. The same booth where Sophie had sat alone with her $2 and a single cupcake exactly 1 year ago. The same waitress was working, and when she saw them, her face lit up with recognition. Well, if it isn't the birthday girl, look at you now, surrounded by family. They ordered burgers and milkshakes, and when dessert came, it was a slice of chocolate cake with a candle. This time when they sang Happy Birthday, Sophie wasn't crying from loneliness. She was crying from gratitude. As she blew out the candle, Tyler asked what she wished for.